I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to cheat on his wife. It sounds stupid now, even as I write it out. But if someone had asked me 5 years ago on the day I married Emily if I could ever betray her, I would have laughed in their face. I would have told them how much I loved her, how she was my best friend, my everything. But here I am. I'm 29 years old, married for 5 years, no kids, good job, nice apartment. To the outside world, I have it all. And yet, I managed to ruin it with a single choice, a night of passion with someone who wasn't my wife. Her name was Lana. She worked in my office, the kind of woman who could make a room feel smaller just by walking in. She was confident, magnetic, the type of person who never seemed to hesitate. She laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny, and she had this habit of touching your arm when she talked. Little things, meaningless things, until they weren't. Don't even know when it started. Maybe it was that late night at work when we were the last two in the office, and she made a joke about how we deserved a drink. Maybe it was when she started texting me outside of work. Harmless, casual, but slowly seeping into something more. Or maybe, if I'm being completely honest, it started long before Lana. Maybe it started when I stopped looking at Emily the same way I used to. When I started feeling more like her roommate than her husband. When the kisses became routine. When the conversations were just grocery lists and work rants. I don't know. All I know is that one night, after too many drinks, I found myself in Lana's apartment. And the worst part? It wasn't even the first time. I could try to justify it, make excuses. But the truth is, I was weak. I was selfish. I wanted to feel wanted, and now I don't know what to do. Lana left. It wasn't a dramatic ending. There were no ultimatums, no declarations of love. She just moved on like I was another checkbox on her list. And that's when it hit me. None of it mattered. She never really wanted me. I was just a distraction. But I have to live with the consequences. I have 3 options, and none of them feel right. Confess everything to Emily. Lay it all out. Put the power in her hands. If she wants to forgive me, great. If she wants to leave, I accept it. But am I really ready for that? Tell her and end it myself. Spare her the choice. Take the decision out of her hands. Give her time to move her tenants out of her apartment and let her go. But can I really walk away from her just like that? Bury it. Never tell her, never do it again. Become the perfect husband overnight. Pretend I never strayed. But could I ever look her in the eyes and not feel like a fraud? I've gone over these 3 options in my head 1,000 times, but I keep coming up empty. What I do know is that Emily has started to notice something's off. I see it in the way she watches me. The slight hesitation in her voice when she asks, "Everything okay?" I tell her I'm just stressed with work. She doesn't push, but I know she doesn't buy it. Last night we were sitting on the couch watching a show. She reached for my hand, just a small, natural thing, and I flinched. It was barely noticeable, but she pulled her hand back like I had burned her. She didn't say anything, just stared at the screen, eyes unfocused. I felt like the worst person in the world. And then, today, something happened that sent my stomach into knots. I was at work, staring blankly at my screen, when my phone buzzed. A text from Lana. "I hope you figure things out." That was it. No follow-up, no explanation. Just those 6 words, "figure things out." It sounded more like a warning than a goodbye, and suddenly I realized I wasn't just worried about telling Emily. I was worried about what she already knew. Because what if I wasn't the only one with a secret? I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, the room swallowed in darkness, Emily breathing softly beside me. Every minute that passed felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. Lana's text played over and over in my mind. "I hope you figure things out." Why did she send that? Was it a farewell, a final dig at my guilt? Or worse, did she know something I didn't? I turned onto my side, watching Emily's back rise and fall. For 5 years, this had been my home, my safe place. But now, all I could think about was the secret wedged between us, thickening the air, poisoning every word I spoke. 3 choices, 3 paths. Confess, leave, lie. Each one felt worse than the last. The first attempt at normal. The next morning, I forced myself into autopilot. Made coffee, got dressed, pretended I didn't notice Emily's lingering stares. "You're up early," she said, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. Yeah, couldn't sleep, I lied, sipping my coffee too fast. She nodded, but her gaze didn't leave me. You sure everything's okay? There it was, again. The same question, the same hesitation. I swallowed. Just work stuff. She held my stare for a second too long before giving a small smile. All right. That was it. No accusations, no suspicion, just a simple all right. But that was worse. It meant she trusted me, and I didn't deserve it. Option 1. The confession I almost told her. We went to dinner that night, something we hadn't done in weeks. The restaurant was the same one we used to go to when we were dating, back when conversations flowed easily, back when I hadn't done something unforgivable. She looked beautiful. Her dark hair curled over her shoulders, her eyes bright in the dim candlelight. I used to take moments like this for granted. We talked about work, about her friend's wedding coming up, but I barely heard a word. I was too busy thinking, tell her now. Just say it. Rip the Band-Aid off. The words sat on the tip of my tongue, burning my throat. Emily, I cheated. But before I could open my mouth, she sighed and put down her fork. I need to tell you something. My stomach dropped. She shifted, in her seat, suddenly looking nervous. Her fingers twisted the napkin in her lap. I don't know how to say this, she continued. I've been thinking about it for a while and... My hands clenched under the table. Was she about to tell me she knew? Did Lana say something? Did I slip up somewhere? She took a deep breath. Jake, I don't think I'm happy. The words hit me like a truck. I blinked. What? I don't know how else to say it, she said, shaking her head. Lately, I feel like we're not us anymore. I stared at her, my pulse hammering. This wasn't what I expected. Is this about me being distant? I asked, my voice thin. Because if it is, it's more than that, she cut in. I feel like we're just going through the motions. Like we're playing house instead of actually being in a marriage. A bitter taste filled my mouth. She wasn't wrong. I had felt it too. The distance, the slow unraveling. The way we had become more like two people coexisting rather than two people in love. And yet, hearing her say it still made my chest tighten. Jake, are you happy? She asked. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Because how could I say yes when I had been in another woman's bed? And how could I say no without shattering everything we built? Emily sighed. I don't want to make any rash decisions, she said, but I can't ignore this feeling anymore. I swallowed past the lump in my throat. She was giving me an out. She was handing me the perfect excuse to tell her everything, but instead I nodded. I understand. Because I was a coward. Option 2. The exit strategy. That night, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, trying to imagine life without Emily. She could move back into her old apartment once her tenants left. I could tell her it was over, that we both deserved a fresh start. Maybe we did. Maybe this was the universe's way of telling me that we had already run our course. But when I walked back into the bedroom and saw her curled up under the covers, wearing one of my old t-shirts, I felt sick. I wasn't ready to. Let her go. And that terrified me. Option 3. The lie. The next few days were a blur. I buried it. I buried everything. I forced myself to smile. I made an effort. I kissed her more. I asked about her day. I did everything I should have done before I ruined us. I told myself this was how I'd fix things, that as long as I never cheated again, as long as I became the perfect husband, maybe I could erase the past. Maybe I could pretend it never happened. But lies have a way of festering. And then, just as I was convincing myself that I could live with the secret, Emily said something that made my blood run cold. Jake, is there someone else? I felt my world tilt. She was staring at me, eyes searching. There was no anger, no accusation, just quiet uncertainty. I forced a laugh. What? No. She didn't look convinced. You've just been different lately, she said. And I keep wondering if maybe there's something I don't know. My heart pounded. Did she know? Was she testing me? Had Lana told her something? I kept my face neutral. There's no one else. A long silence stretched between us. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, That was it. No follow-up questions. No fight. Just okay. And somehow that was worse. Because now, I wasn't just a cheater. I was a liar, too. The guilt was eating me alive. I spent the next few days walking around in a haze, replaying Emily's question over and over. Is there someone else? She had asked it so casually, almost as if she didn't expect an answer, but something about the way she looked at me, the way her voice trembled just slightly, told me she knew. She didn't have proof. Not yet, but she had a feeling. And when a woman feels something is off, she's usually right. I tried to act normal. I kissed her in the mornings. I made an effort to listen when she talked about work. I even suggested we go out for drinks like we used to before marriage made us predictable. But she saw through it. I could feel it every time her eyes lingered too long, every time she hesitated before responding. I had always thought that if I ever got caught cheating, it would be because I slipped up, because of a misplaced text, a change in routine, a bow scent that wasn't hers on my clothes. I never imagined it would be because of something as simple as the way I existed in the same space as her. Emily felt the distance, even when I was standing right next to her. And then, just as I was convincing myself that I had dodged a bullet, that I could still control the narrative, she shattered my world with 5 words. Jake. I have a confession. I went still. We were sitting on the couch, an old movie playing in the background. I turned to her, my throat dry. What is it? She hesitated, fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure, she said softly. But I think I'm in love with someone else. The words didn't register at first. My mind blanked, my heart stopped. I stared at her like she had just spoken a foreign language. What? She swallowed hard. I haven't done anything, I swear, she said quickly. I haven't cheated. But there's someone. And I think about him too much. I don't know when it started, but it just happened. The world tilted on its axis. This isn't happening. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. I was the one who cheated. I was the villain in this story. I was supposed to be the one groveling, begging for forgiveness. But now, she was sitting across from me, confessing her feelings for someone else. It didn't make sense. I let out a short, bitter laugh. You think you're in love with him? She flinched at the sharpness in my voice. I don't know. I don't want to be. I shot up from the couch, pacing the room, my hands shaking. This isn't real. I had spent weeks, months, suffocating under the weight of my own betrayal, convincing myself that I had single-handedly destroyed our marriage. But all this time, she had been drifting toward someone else? I turned to her, my pulse hammering. Who is he? She looked away. Jake. Who? Is he? I repeated, my voice raw. Silence. And then, it doesn't matter, she whispered. I let out a hollow laugh. Oh, it matters to me, Em. It matters a hell of a lot. She closed her eyes like she was preparing for impact. It's someone from work. A sharp pang shot through my chest. Of course. It was always someone from work, wasn't it? The convenient kind of affair. The one that didn't need to be planned. The one that slipped into routine. I clenched my jaw. Have you talked to him about this? She shook her head quickly. No. He doesn't know how I feel, and I would never... But you do feel it, I cut in. She exhaled, shoulders shaking. Yes. I ran a hand over my face, trying to breathe through the anger, through the disbelief. How long? Jake. How long? She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Months, I said hoarsely. Jesus, Emily, her eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean for it to happen. I let out a bitter chuckle. Yeah? Funny thing about that. Neither did I. Her face snapped up, eyes wide. What? And just like that, the secret I had spent months suffocating under slipped out like a blade in the dark. I stared at her, my breath coming fast. She blinked, confusion flickering across her face before realization set in. Her lips parted. Jake. What are you saying? I almost walked it back. Almost. But then I thought about Lana. About the way I had justified it. The way I had convinced myself that Emily and I were already broken. I thought about the choices I had made. And suddenly, I wanted her to hurt the way I had just hurt. I'm saying, I said slowly, deliberately, that I cheated. A sharp inhale. She went impossibly still, like she had just been struck. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. With who? Lana, I admitted. A few months ago. It's over. Now. She let out a breath that sounded like a sob, her hands gripping the fabric of her sweater like she was holding herself together. And then, just when I thought she would scream, cry, throw something, she laughed. A quiet, broken, horrible laugh. I froze. Emily! Of course, she whispered, shaking her head. Of course you did. I felt my stomach drop, because that wasn't shock in her voice. It was expectation. She wasn't surprised. She was disappointed. And somehow that was worse. How long? She asked, echoing my own question. I swallowed hard. A few months? She nodded slowly like she was processing it, filing it away. Then she looked at me, eyes glassy, lips trembling. So what do we do now? She whispered. I opened my mouth, but for the first time in my life I had no answer. Emily didn't cry. She didn't scream, didn't throw anything, didn't even call me names. And somehow, that was worse. She just sat there staring at me like she was finally seeing me for who I really was. And maybe she was. I had always thought that the moment she found out, there would be some grand explosion, tears, rage, maybe even a slap across the face. But instead, there was just silence, a deep, gut-wrenching, stomach-turning silence. And then she spoke. I guess this makes us even. I flinched. Even. Like this was some kind of transaction, like our sins canceled each other out. I wanted to tell her it wasn't the same. That thinking about someone wasn't the same as doing it. That I had crossed a line she never did. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. We had both betrayed each other. Hers was an emotional affair. Mine was physical. But at the end of the day, we had both checked out. I ran a hand over my face. So what now? She exhaled, looking down at her hands. I don't know. Neither of us did. For the first time in 5 years, we weren't on the same page. We had spent so long building this life together, choosing furniture, decorating our apartment, talking about future kids we never got around to having. And now, all of that felt irrelevant. I glanced at her left hand, at the ring that used to mean something. She caught me looking. Do you love her? I jerked back. What? Lana? She said, her voice eerily calm. Do you love her? The question hit me harder than I expected. Thought about Lana's smirks, her teasing texts, the way she had made me feel like something more than just a husband stuck in a routine. But love? No. It had never been love. I shook my head. No, not even close. Emily let out a breath, but it wasn't relief. It was something else. And this guy? I asked. The one from work. Do you love him? She hesitated. My stomach twisted. I don't know, she admitted. I haven't allowed myself to think about it that way. I swallowed. But you could. A beat of silence. Maybe. The word hit me like a hammer. Maybe. Maybe she could love someone else. Maybe she already did. Maybe I was the only one, still pretending we could fix this. I leaned back against the couch, rubbing my temples. This is so messed up. Emily let out a dry laugh. No kidding. We sat there for what felt like forever. Finally, she broke the silence. I think I should stay at my apartment for a while. I flinched. She had been renting it out for years. Ever since. She moved in with me, but she had never once called at her apartment. Not until now. So that's it? I asked. You're just leaving? She frowned. What else do you want me to do, Jake? Pretend everything's fine? Sleep in the same bed knowing what we both did? I had no response. Because she was right. This wasn't something a romantic weekend getaway could fix. This wasn't a fight that ended with makeup sex and a promise to do better. This was the end. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. She stood, rubbing her arms. I'll stay here until I can get the tenants out. It shouldn't take long. I nodded stiffly. Right. Another silence. And then she looked at me, really looked at me, like she was memorizing my face for the last time. I don't hate you, she said softly. My throat tightened. I don't hate you either. Her lips pressed together like she was holding back tears. Then why does it feel like we lost? She whispered. I didn't have an answer, because in that moment I realized we had already lost a long time ago, the last night. Together, that night, neither of us slept. We lay in the same bed, inches apart, not touching, not speaking. I kept waiting for her to change her mind, to roll over and whisper, "Let's fix this." But she never did, and I didn't either. At some point, I heard her sniffle, but I didn't turn to comfort her. I just stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds, knowing that by morning, she'd be gone. Emily left in the morning, no big dramatic goodbye, no long conversation, just a quiet, tired sort of departure. She packed a single suitcase, just enough to get her through the next few weeks while her tenants figured out their move. I watched from the doorway as she zipped it up, her fingers trembling slightly. It was the first sign of emotion she had shown since last night. When she turned to me, her expression was unreadable. You don't have to go, I said, even though I knew she did. She gave me a sad smile. Yeah, I do, and that was it. No, I love you. No, we'll talk later, no. Maybe we can fix this. Just a quiet, aching finality. She rolled her suitcase to the door, paused for half a second like she might turn back, like she might change her mind. Then, she opened it and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her and suddenly it hit me. She was really gone. The aftermath. A house that no longer feels like home. The silence in our apartment was suffocating. For 5 years, Emily had been everywhere. Her coffee mugs left on the counter, her shoes abandoned by the door, her books stacked in little, uneven piles around the living room. Now it felt like she had never been here at all. I spent the rest of the day in a fog, aimlessly moving from room to room, opening drawers just to see if she had really taken her things. The emptiness made me sick. At some point, I found myself standing in the bedroom, staring at her nightstand. Her wedding ring was sitting there. I sank onto the bed, picking it up, turning it over in my palm. She hadn't even taken it with her. That should have been the moment I accepted. It was over, but instead it just made me angrier. Because what the hell were we supposed to do now? Were we separated, divorcing, waiting to figure things out? There was no closure, no clean break, just this terrible, nauseating limbo. The unexpected call. That night I ignored my phone. I didn't want to talk to anyone. But when it rang for the 3rd time, I finally glanced at the screen. Lana. I almost didn't pick up, but some bitter, self-destructive part of me did. I held the phone to my ear. What? There was a pause. Then, Jake? Her voice was soft, cautious, like she already knew, like she had been waiting for this moment. I heard about Emily, she continued. Are you okay? I let out a cold laugh. Oh, I'm great. Another pause. Then, do you want to come over? I squeezed my eyes shut. I knew exactly what she was offering. A distraction. A warm body. An easy way to numb the pain. For a split second, I almost said yes. But then, I thought about Emily's ring sitting on the nightstand. I thought about the way she had looked at me before she walked out the door. Tired, heartbroken, but not angry, because she wasn't fighting for us anymore. She had already let go, and now it was my turn to decide what kind of man I wanted to be. I exhaled. No, Lana. Silence. Then, all right. Take care, Jake. I hung up, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I finally made the right choice. The breaking point days passed, then a week. Emily and I barely spoke. She was busy settling into her old apartment, dealing with work, avoiding me. I was stuck in the apartment that no longer felt like home, surrounded by ghosts of the life we had built. The silence between us stretched wider and wider until one night, exactly 10 days after she left, she finally called. I stared at her name on my screen for a long time before answering. Hey, I said. She was quiet for a second, then, We should talk. My chest tightened. Yeah, she sighed. Can you come over? The final conversation. I stood outside her apartment door for way too long before knocking. When she opened it, I barely recognized her. She looked lighter, like she had already started moving on. I stepped inside, my heart pounding. What did you want to talk about? She motioned to the couch, but I didn't sit. Neither did she. She folded her arms, taking a deep breath. Jake, we need to be honest with ourselves. I swallowed hard. About what? She gave me a look. I already knew the answer. She just needed to say it out loud. We don't love each other anymore, she said quietly. The words knocked the air from my lungs, because she was right. We had spent months, maybe years, convincing ourselves that love was enough, that we could fix whatever was broken between us, but we hadn't been in love for a long time. I rubbed the back of my neck. So what are you saying? She hesitated. I think we should make it official. The final blow. A part of me had been holding onto this stupid, desperate hope that maybe we just needed time. But Emily had made up her mind. She wasn't asking for space. She was asking for a divorce. I let out a shaky breath. Okay. Her eyes flickered with surprise, like she had expected me to fight her on it, like she had expected me to beg. But I didn't. Because for the first time in weeks, I finally saw it clearly. This wasn't about one mistake. It wasn't about Lana, or the guy from Emily's office, or any of the other things we had told ourselves were the problem. This was about us. We had both outgrown each other. We had both been looking for a way out long before either of us admitted it. Emily exhaled. We'll figure out the paperwork later. I nodded. Yeah. Another silence. And then she reached into her pocket and pulled something out. Her wedding ring. She pressed it into my palm. You keep it. My throat burned. Emily, goodbye, Jake. And just like that, it was over. It's been 3 months since Emily walked away. 3 months since I stood in her apartment, holding her wedding ring in my hand, realizing that I had finally lost the one person I thought would always be there. The divorce papers came last week. Stared at them for an entire day before signing. Not because I was unsure, no. I knew this was the right thing. But because it was so final. Once I put my name on that paper, there was no going back. No rewinding time. No waking up next to her and pretending things were okay. So I sat at my kitchen table, in what was now just my apartment, pen in hand, wondering how the hell I got here. And then I signed. Just like that, 5 years of marriage were reduced to a few pieces of paper and a signature. I should have felt something more. Sadness, relief, regret. But all I felt was empty. The fallout I. Haven't spoken to Emily since. Not really, anyway. A few short, polite texts about logistics, what to do with the joint bank account, how to divide the furniture, whether she wanted to keep the coffee maker or let me have, it. It's weird how quickly two people can go from being everything to each other to being nothing more than legal paperwork and unanswered texts. She's still in the same city, still working at the same job, but she's not mine anymore, and I have to live with that. Lana tried to reach out. She called twice. I let it go to voicemail both times. She texted too. I heard about the divorce. I'm really sorry. If you want to talk, I'm here. I stared at the message for a long time. It would have been easy, so damn easy, to go back to her, to fall into her bed, drown myself in her body, pretend I wasn't completely falling apart inside, but I didn't reply. Because I knew now, Lana wasn't what I wanted. She was just an escape from a reality I didn't have the guts to face. And I wasn't running anymore. Learning to be alone, the first few weeks were the worst, coming home to silence, cooking dinner for one, reaching out in the middle of the night, half asleep, expecting Emily to be there, only to find nothing but cold sheets. I tried to fill the void, hit the gym, went out with friends, drank too much on the weekends, but none of it helped, because at the end of the day I had to sit with myself, with my mistakes, with the person I had become. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't like what I saw. Facing the truth, I had spent so much time blaming Emily for drifting, for checking out of our marriage, for letting go before I was ready. But the truth was, she had been right. We weren't happy. We hadn't been for a long time, and instead of confronting it, I had looked for an escape. Lana wasn't the problem. The guy from Emily's office wasn't the problem. We were. We had let our love slip through the cracks, and by the time we noticed, it was already too late. The ring, Emily's wedding ring, is still sitting in my nightstand. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe I thought I'd wake up one day and feel differently. Maybe I thought it would hurt less over time. But some nights, I'd take it out, hold it in my palm, run my thumb over the smooth, familiar metal. And I wonder, if I had done things differently, would we have made it if I had talked to her sooner? If I had fought harder? If I had been better? But that's the thing about ifs. They don't change a damn thing. The past is the past, and I have to live with the choices I made. Closure comes in strange ways. The other day I ran into one of Emily's friends at a coffee shop. She hesitated when she saw me, like she wasn't sure if she should say something, but then she smiled. "You look better," she said. I blinked. "Better?" She nodded. "Yeah, lighter, like you can finally breathe again." I didn't know what to say to that because the truth was, I did feel lighter, not happy. Not healed, but lighter. Like for the first time in years, I wasn't holding on to something that was already gone. The last goodbye. Emily and I never had a final conversation. No big moment of closure, no dramatic reconciliation, just a quiet understanding that we had already said everything that needed to be said, and maybe that's how it's supposed to be. Not every love story ends with a grand gesture. Sometimes, it just ends, and you learn to live with it. Moving forward, I don't know where Emily is right now. Maybe she's dating. Maybe she's happy. Maybe she's still figuring it out just like me. But wherever she is, I hope she's okay. I hope she finds whatever she was looking for. And as for me, I'm still learning how to be me again. Not Jake the husband, not Jake the cheater, just Jake. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough. That's the end of today's story. Did things turn out the way you thought, or were there some surprises along the way? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you haven't joined the community yet, now's the perfect time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're always the first to catch new stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.